Welcome back to another video on my channel. This is the beginning of a SwiperJS mini-series here, where I will show you how to build SwiperJS sliders in Webflow. There's been some tools released recently that would help you with building Swiper sliders in Webflow directly. However, they are paid, and I feel like if you are an aspiring Webflow developer, or if you're calling yourself a Webflow Pro, you should definitely be able to build SwiperJS sliders in Webflow without relying on other tools. I use SwiperJS sliders all the time for my client projects because they're really flexible and offer advanced functionalities. In this video, I'll give you a general breakdown of the SwiperJS library, an overview, I'll show you how you can navigate around it, and then we will build a basic SwiperJS Webflow slider setup. Let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is to open swiperjs.com to get to their website, of the official library website. Then you can navigate to the docs and just open Getting Started to begin with. There you'll find some basic information about how to set it up, also how to nest the elements properly. But don't worry, we'll get into all of that. So usually when working with libraries and we're using Webflow, we'll just use the CDN link to import the up-to-date script here. You can paste it in your page settings. You could also paste it in your global site settings, but just in that case, I'll use the page settings here to just affect this particular page. And then we'll get the style sheet, because SwiperJS comes with a default style sheet that just helps the library to basically work smoothly and style your elements how they should look. Now the next thing is that I'll go to the Swiper core / API here in the docs dropdown, and there you can see another Swiper full HTML layout, and that's actually like the first thing that we'll do. So you can basically see that there's the class of Swiper, that is the outer wrapper. Then you get another wrapper, that is the Swiper wrapper, and they're required, these elements. And then inside you have the Swiper slides. So also there's like information here about the Swiper, different like Swiper setups for other elements that we'll cover in different videos. But for now, I'll just navigate back to Webflow. And here we have these link blocks here, and we'll wrap them inside of like a Swiper slide. That's like the first level, basically. Swiper slide is to determine that this is one slide, not too difficult to understand. Then we will have the Swiper wrapper, like that. And then we will wrap the Swiper wrapper in a Swiper class itself, just like this, Swiper. Then we'll do the same thing for the other links too. So this will also be a Swiper slide. And the last one will also be a Swiper slide. Cool. Now we are nesting them next to each other as siblings and children of the Swiper wrapper, just how the documentation is telling us to do. The next thing that I would do is that to not actually style the Swiper elements, the Swiper classes themselves, because you can have some conflicts with the Swiper default styles. And also if you have many Swiper instances and different kinds of Swiper instances on your side, then it can get a little bit messy if you start really styling the Swiper class itself. So I will always go ahead and create a combo class for the specific Swiper section, kind of Swiper component I'm currently building. So in this case, I'll just call it isVideo, because it's just for the video, right? So isVideo, like that. And the same will I'll do for all the other Swiper slides. Swiper is video, Swiper slide is video. Cool. Now we can make edits on these elements and their classes without like breaking anything, and really like we can maintain a good flexibility as we build more. Now let's take a further look at the actual Swiper setup here. So you can see that to initialize a Swiper, and that's basically just really to tell Swiper, okay, here on my page there is like a Swiper setup. I want this to really have the functionality of Swiper. You need to tell the library. So in that case, you see here, we get this little script here. It's a pretty minimalistic script here that they're providing. I actually have my own Swiper code template kind of that I always just copy paste in my new projects and then just modify slightly. But for the sake of this video and really giving you a general overview, we will build the Swiper setup from scratch. So in that case, I'll just copy this setup here, this little snippet, and I'll put it inside of script tags here. So I hope that you can still see this here. Yeah, you should be able to see it. Script opening tag, script closing tag after, and we'll paste it in here. Const swiper equals new swiper, so that's telling the library that we want to have a new swiper instance. I will just name this swiper video to give it a clearer name, because as we would have like different sliders on a single page, they would all, like, in the best case, have different variable names so that you can like recognize them better and work with them more efficiently. Then we're basically creating the new swiper here, and this is like a CSS selector. So if you're familiar with CSS selector, this should be pretty straightforward to you, but I'll like try to explain it as good as possible. So here we're basically looking for every element using the dot that has the class of swiper. So in that case, on this page, we would be able to easily find this particular swiper element because there is no other swiper on our page. However, if we would have multiple setups of like the same swiper, then this would get like a little bit harder to manage. And also I would generally not advise to just look for the swiper class. Instead, we have the combo class here. So you can instead do it like this, dot swiper, and then you can add another dot here, dot is video. So now it will find this particular element on our page. You could also do another thing, which is to use IDs. So for example, on the swiper element here, you could go ahead and like add an ID, like swiper video, for example, swiper dash video. And now you could, instead of using the dot, you could actually use another character here, which is this one. And now it would search for an element that has the specific ID of swiper, video, but I will use the class here. The next parameters are pretty easy for you to understand probably. That's just the speed of each slide movement that we're doing. So we're sliding, and that's how long one slide movement takes. Then we get the space between. So this is interesting. That's the space between the slides. The name says it, but there's like some interesting things here to know, because as you can see in Webflow here itself, we really don't have like something that really resembles a swiper or like even like a slider at all. It's just like the elements stacked on top of each other. I can set this to flex, for example, but I would like generally recommend to not worry too much about how it looks inside of your Webflow designer itself, but more how it looks on your published site. Because since we're using a script and also the style sheet here, they are not even loaded in our Webflow designer. They're only really like executed on the published side. So you will go ahead and like use like your staging domain, for example, and publish there, and there it will look different from what you have here. So if we're just using this particular setup, we can check it out. I'll just publish it here, and we can see if there's like anything that's showing already, how it looks there. So as you can see here, I can already drag it like that horizontally, but every single slide covers the full screen, right? So like, or at least like the full swiper visible space here. So let's make some updates to this. So Swiper has some really nice options there that you can see in their Swiper documentation. I'll just zoom out again a little bit. In their Swiper documentation here, you can pretty much read through all of the options that you have, and each of these properties will be placed inside of the initialization script that we just added here. So we can basically just modify the configuration here. I'll get the breakpoints later because that will also be important. But here you can also already see the slides per view that is inside of this one. We could also find it slides per view. I'll just try to get it So since this is alphabetically in an alphabetic order, right, we can like get the slides preview property here at S, and I'll just copy it. It also always has like a little description here of what the default variable value is, right? So in that case, the default value is 1, which is why it only shows like 1 per slide, right? Per view, right? So in that case, I'll just say slides per view, and I'll set it to 3. Now slides per view is 3, which means that we'll have 3 slides visible. I'll also adjust the space between, which is set in pixels. As far as I know, you can only set it in pixels. I always just set it in pixels here. I'll just set it instead to 24. Now I'll save again, and after each save, you'll have to publish it to really see the differences, right? So in that case, we're currently publishing. Now I'm refreshing this, and you can see that we have 3 slides here. You can't like slide anything here or swipe anything just because we only have 3 slides, so there's no point in doing anything. But if we were now to, for example, duplicate this slide a couple of times and publish again, you would see that this calculates the width of each slide perfectly, and we would like have a nice Swiper setup here. However, I'm not a big fan of like the slides just like showing up after this like clipped edge here. As you can see, it doesn't look really aesthetic. So one thing that you want to do here is to set the swiper element to overflow visible. And you might think, okay, but like, isn't it like set to overflow visible? Because we didn't set it to overflow hidden. So why should it be overflow hidden? Well, that's because if we take a look at the source code here, or like the HTML behind it, right? So we can like see if we select the swiper element, class swiper is video, and have a look at its styles that are applied, we will see that its overflow is hidden. And that's from, you can see it already here, the swiper CSS that we included above. So if we want to override some of these styles, that's a good thing of having like a combo class here. We could just set it to overflow visible. And now if we were publishing again, which we're doing now, you'll see that now the value is overridden. And instead, we'll have a nice overflowing kind of setup here where it just like works smoothly here and it doesn't cut the edges. The other default styles are not like are not really important here. Everything works well like this. So now let's have a look at some other things. For example, if we just resize the window here, you might see that at a specific point, each single slide doesn't have enough space. So that's where breakpoints come into play. So in Webflow, we also have the breakpoints, right? But we can't really do too much just with the Webflow breakpoints themselves if we want to work with the Swiper library. Instead, we'll have to use its breakpoints module. So that's here, breakpoints, and you can see like a detailed breakdown of how this this works. So we can like just copy this part here, for example, and just see that we get the correct closing tags. Yep, we got them. And now we'll paste them in our initialization script. So like this. And the responsive breakpoints work a little bit differently than the Webflow breakpoints themselves, because the Webflow breakpoints and just CSS breakpoints are cascading down, which means that if you're making changes on the desktop breakpoint, they will be reflected on lower breakpoints. But the Swiper breakpoints kind of work in an inverted way, where what you define here in the beginning is pretty much, it counts for mobile. And then if you want to make changes as it grows bigger, like as the viewport size increases, you'll have to add them with breakpoints. You see the comment here? So this is when the window width is bigger or equal to 300 pixels. And this is where it's bigger or equal to 480 pixels, which would like start the landscape breakpoint in Webflow in that case. I'll get rid of some of them and instead just include 2. So what we will have is that on tablet, which will be starting from 700 and 68, or actually from landscape, let's do it like from 480 pixels and above. We will set the slides per view to 2, and then on mobile itself, we will have the slides per view at 1. And then we will add another breakpoint, like modify this breakpoint, and instead use the tablet breakpoint here. We can also adjust the comment. We will set the slides per view to 3, which means that on tablet and desktop, we will have 3 slides visible, like how the size of the slides is calculated, right? And then also we will have 2 slides visible on the landscape breakpoint and 1 slide visible on the mobile breakpoint. We can also basically modify a lot of different values in each single breakpoint. So for example, we can, as you can see here, set a different space between the slides. So this will be our default space. In that case, I will just go ahead and say, instead of 24, I want 16 on mobile, which will be the mobile here, or the default kind of view. And then we want 24 starting from tablet, and we will have the same value as on mobile portrait here on mobile landscape. So that's slides per view 2, but the space will be inherited from this here. Now I will save the script, which is important, and then I'll publish it again here. Takes a while, and now it's live. So now you will see that this is actually now a view where we only have 1 here, because this width here is like 443, which means that it's like like a pretty small breakpoint, right? And now as we're like scaling this up, as we're increasing the viewport size, you see that the whole thing is adjusting. So Swiper is like responsive like that. The next thing that we'll do, and that's the last thing that we'll do for this particular video, is to add navigation buttons. So you don't only want your slider to be navigatable like this, right? You want your slider to be navigatable with you don't only want it to be swipeable, but also like you want arrows usually. So in that case, that's called navigation. It's called navigation, and we'll have to look for the particular element, or also here on the left side, you can see the modules also laid out like this. So there you have all the details of navigation itself. You could like have the pagination properties, but we'll just use the navigation for now. So you can see there's a next element, there's a previous element. That's the most important ones. But we'll like just go up here a little bit again to N for navigation. And you can see it here, it's highlighted. So that looks like this pretty much. So you get another object here that includes the properties for the navigation that are specific to navigation. So we'll just paste this in again. Before the breakpoints here, I like to keep the breakpoints last always. I'll just make sure that the indentation here is like nice. Cool. Hope this is visible properly. Yeah, should be visible. Now the next element and the previous element. So these are again to target the specific elements in our Webflow project, again using CSS selectors to tell Swiper which are our elements to use for navigation. I'll just save this for now, but we'll build the elements first, because currently there are no elements indicating this, right? So in that case, I will just go ahead and add like a div block. And this div block I will call Swiper navigation. Let's do it like that. Swiper navigation will then hold our specific elements, our buttons. I will also apply a little bit of like a top margin. In that case, I will just set it to 3 rem to the top. And now I'll set it to display flex so that our buttons, our navigation arrows will be next to each other. So I'll set 1.5 rem space between them horizontally. And now we'll add 2 elements. I'm using the custom element here to set their element to a button, because it's like a button that you're using. It's not just like a div, right? So in that case, we'll have a button here. I'll give it the class of Swiper arrow but like there's also like another class already like that, so I'll just call it swiper arrow video. And then I will set the dimensions here, like 2.5 rem in width, 2.5 rem in height. Just remove the padding here, set it to flex center, and I'll increase the size a bit, just also so that you can see better. 3.5 rem. Now we can like set a color here. Like for example, I'll just use this one now. Set the border radius to 100% for it to be a circle. So that's like swiper arrow video. And then inside of this, I'll nest an image. And this image will just be the icon itself that we want for the arrow. So in this case, it will be swiper arrow video icon. Just naming it a little bit clunky here, but that's because another class already exists in the project. So now I will set the width to, let's say, 1 rem, and I already have the assets here in my project. So you can see here, this is like the left button, and then we'll have another button where we'll use the right icon here. And now we have to just add like a specific class, because Swiper is listening for different classes, for different elements, for the left and right navigation button. So what we will do in this case is to add another class here. So this will be isPrevious, and then the other one will be isNext. So the good thing with this setup is that you can still make adjustments to both Swiper navigation buttons at the same time. I would recommend like just selecting the swiper arrow video class itself here. There you can make adjustments and they will be reflected on both swiper arrow elements, both navigation elements. But then you have to make sure that the class is added again. So in that case here isPrevious, isNext. Now I'll copy this class into my clipboard. And to just signal to Swiper really what kind of like what the element is that we're looking for. Visible? Yeah, it's visible. So to really signal Swiper what elements we're listening for, we'll just do swiper.isVideo to just signal that it's inside of that particular Swiper element in both. Not have 2 dots here, but just 1. So I'll remove it here. Next element and previous element. And now we'll use a CSS selector technique that actually is looking for elements inside of Swiper isVideo. So in that case, we will have swiper dot swiper arrow video, and the same thing here. But in that case, it's the combo class dot isNext, and in that case, it's the combo class isPrevious, like this. Now we can save it again and publish it to our staging domain. And now we'll already be working to control our Swiper element, our Swiper instance, just using these navigation buttons, as you can see here. So that's already pretty cool functionality. And really the last thing that we'll do for this video, because I think that it can provide also good value to you, is use the keyboard control. So we'll go up again here, parameters here, and then go to K. Keyboard, because besides now only using like the swiper arrows here and the dragging of the slider, we can also make it keyboard controllable so that you can like just use your arrow keys to also navigate through. So we'll add it after navigation, opening bracket, closing bracket, and now the particular also don't forget to add like the comma after. And here I'll just get it from the Swiper documentation again. We'll get the keyboard enabled true. So that's like important to enable the keyboard works. And also we'll get only in viewport, which controls if you want it to only be controllable when the Swiper instance is in the view currently or not. I will activate this because I only want it to be controllable when it's actually in view. So now that we've added this, we'll save, hit publish again for the last time in this particular video. But as I said, I'll create more videos about this to really get you to Swiper Pro level. And now I'm just clicking pressing my arrow keys and I'm navigating through the slides. So that's pretty cool. Also, a little thing is that rewind is a good thing to set. Rewind, because at the end currently it just stops, it doesn't go further, but I want it to start at the beginning again. So in that case, I will just go ahead and add rewind, true, then the comma. So that will do the functionality that it gets back to the first slide after you reach the last slide. Hit publish, refresh, and now as we go to the last one, we're going back to the first. And if we're at the first and click to the left side, we get to the last one. So that's the first video of this SwiperJS mini-series. I hope that this was really helpful for you and that you understood everything I was covering in this video. It's a really amazing tool. It's perfect to build advanced sliders in Webflow because Webflow's own slider element is like just really clunky and it's not suited for advanced things. Meanwhile, SwiperJS really is that. So see you next time. Make sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.